pretty amazing what has been accomplished in those 10 years. The fact is we have 17 states, including the District of Columbia, that offer same-sex marriage. And every day it seems something else happens. Yesterday, Texas voted down a ban on same-sex marriage. Today, we have Kentucky has now must acknowledge same-sex marriages that happen in other states. You know, and, my name is Jay Blotcher, and I was one of the couples that were married 10 years ago today, right outside in weather in weather that was much warmer than it is today. You know, but we decided that it was time to celebrate, to really look back at what was accomplished, but to look ahead at what still needs to be accomplished. We're going to be handing out some flyers now, and we want you to take them home and continue to be a supporter for marriage equality, because there's still more that you can do. We have a flyer from Freedom to Marry, which is based in New York City, and some more information from the New York Civil Liberties Union, which will map out exactly where we are and where we are going to go. Let me give you an overview of the evening. I'm going to introduce the director of the film that's going to be shown. The film is called I Now Pronounce You Husband and Husband. The director will explain it. We will show the film. After the film, we will have a panel discussion with 5 people who have done, made things happen in terms of the marriage equality movement. We will open that up to questions and answers. After that, we will have a reception provided very generously by Augusta's Luscious and mini cupcakes from Sweet Marissa's, longtime marriage equality supporters. So that is it. We should wrap this up by 9 o'clock or so. But I wanted to start, first of all, with reading you a statement from one of the pioneers of marriage equality. He could not be here tonight. His name is Evan Wolfson, and he was really one of the earliest proponents of marriage equality. He is the founder and president of Freedom to Marry. And this is welcome remarks by Evan Wolfson. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years since the groundbreaking first marriages for gay and lesbian couples in the town of New Paltz. At the time, loving and committed same-sex couples were barred from marrying in 49 of the 50 states. Our opponents were spewing anti-gay slanders in waves of states that were being stampeded into adding discriminatory anti-marriage amendments to their constitutions on Election Day. America in 2004 was not a welcoming place to gay men and lesbians, and the Freedom to Marry movement was just gathering strength. But here in New Paltz, Mayor Jason West was a crusader for the Freedom to Marry cause, when many other politicians were afraid to talk about it. He knew that allowing same-sex couples to share in the freedom to marry was the right thing to do, and he used his platform as mayor to send that message. At a time when so few Americans had had a chance to talk about why marriage matters, Mayor West lifted his voice to promote fairness, freedom, and family, and it echoed nationally and around the world. Today, same-sex couples share in the freedom to marry in America's capital and in 17 states, including here in New York. We've overturned the core of the so-called Defense of Marriage Act, and courts around the country are striking down marriage bans in states like Ohio, Utah, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Virginia, and as of yesterday, Texas. Public opinion has moved, and a majority of Americans now stand with us and Mayor West on the right side of history. We have much to celebrate, including champions in courage and much more to do. Thank you, Mayor West. Thank you, New Paltz. Thank you, New York. And thank you, all of you, who are with us as we at Freedom to Marry push forward to finish the job. And now it's from Evan Wolfson. So now I have a very special announcement. Daniel Torres would like to speak.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to start off by saying that I have a proclamation from the New York State Assembly, our Assemblyman Kevin Cahill, who's sorry he couldn't make it today. I'm not going to bore you by reading the whereases of this very large proclamation here. But the Assemblyman wanted me to send his wishes and just note that the events that happened here 10 years ago certainly had played a large role in this social movement. So on behalf of the Assemblyman and the New York State Assembly and the State of New York, I'd like to thank you, Jason, and everybody else who was involved in that day as well. I also wanted to let everyone know that on Monday, the New Paltz Village Historical Preservation Committee met, and it's been a long time since the village has put a historical marker into place, and recently we just started the paperwork to put one on Peace Park, which would actually it would be one of the first markers that's not actually attached to a building, and by far the most recent marker as well, but it's certainly, I would consider, and I think everyone here else would consider too, a historical moment. And on a side note too, I just wanted to say that I'm going to date myself here. I was a middle school student when this was going on. And I think that that's actually very relevant because I remember going to class and we talked about it in almost all my classes for about a week. And I remember being very blown away at the thought that two people loving each other and getting married could be in a national headline. And I mention that because I think that shows something about my generation and even people older than me as well. So it's amazing what we did 10 years ago, and it's very clear that what happened here is on one side of history as well. And on one final note before I go, I also wanted to thank you, Jason, for showing myself and others in our community that young people really have a seat at the table and can make a lot of social change too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel, for making all that happen. Before we introduce the film, I just want to acknowledge that there are many people here who were here back in 2004, whether they stood up and got married or whether they were instrumental behind the scenes. In addition to Mayor Jason West, we have Rebecca Rotzler, we have Julia Walsh, we have Chris White, we have a lot of wonderful people, and we also have, as I said, people who were married that day. If you had a role in any of it, please raise your hand and be counted and be thanked for everything that you did to make that day a reality. This event really did send shockwaves around the world. We had friends calling us and said, "We just saw you on CNN Europe." Somebody from our town was just checking into a hotel room in Madrid, Spain, and there was New Paltz. And it's really quite amazing that, it really, just the shockwaves, the positive vibes, and all the good things from then still continue. One person who wasn't even aware of all this was a student at Vassar, and she was in the film department, and she wanted to do a film about something to do with gay rights. And she thought, oh, what should I do? Go to Google. So she Googled gay rights in the Hudson Valley, and what to her eyes should appear but information about the New Paltz weddings, which had just happened a few years before, and she had been oblivious to it. But she thought, this I want to do. I want to make a film. And she did. I want to introduce you to the director. Her name is Stephanie Donnelly, and she is going to introduce her film. Stephanie.
Yeah, Jay pretty much got that story right. Alright, so I made this movie a few years ago when I was still in college. As Jay was saying, the world has changed a lot. Even a few months after I finished it, New York State passed marriage equality. So I think it just shows how a lot of progress can be made in a short amount of time. So I hope you all enjoy it.
Okay, so this is a 19-minute film, so bear with us. And I want to also thank Steve for the AV.
Do you, Jeffrey, take William, whom you now hold by the hand, to be your lawfully wedded partner?
I do. small town of New Paltz, New York is following San Francisco's lead. Green Party Mayor Jason West has performed 21 same-sex marriages today.
He calls gay marriage the nation's largest civil rights movement in a generation.
And right now there's a waiting list of more than 1,000 couples on the village's website looking to get married.
Despite the state's domestic relation law that's been interpreted as not allowing licenses for same-sex marriages.
My name is Jason West. I'm the former mayor of New Paltz from 2003 to 2007. Among many of the things we did while in office, I was most well known for being criminally prosecuted for performing 24 same-sex weddings.
I would say to the president that I'm appalled that for the first time in American history, a president has tried to use the Constitution to restrict the freedoms of Americans instead of expand them.
I was frustrated that too many politicians do little or nothing, let alone use the full extent of their capacities and powers to basically to make the world a better place.
Jason projected an image of a young, idealistic, kind of working class mayor. He was the first Green Party mayor to ever be elected in New York State. He was 26 years old.
I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm a member of the Green Party. I don't have any higher-ups in my organization trying to quash this for their future political careers, which leaves me open to follow my conscience and the Constitution as I see it.
I met William Van Rosenberg in 2000 when I was the Green Party candidate for State Assembly in the 101st District here in New York.
William Van Ostenburg and Major Jeffrey McGowan. They lived locally. They were friends with Jason.
This is the chairman of the Democratic Committee. I'm talking to you on the phone. We have this still same-sex equality issue.
William was very much an activist and on the forefront of the civil rights movement to legalize same-sex marriages.
Well, President Bush is defending his call for a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriages. The president said that marriage is between a man and a woman, and that is the ideal.
In light of what President Bush was saying at the time and what the Pope was saying about that gay people that we were bad and evil, I was really getting fed up with it. He asked me to marry him. I thought about it. I said, okay, if we're going to get married, I'm a citizen of the United States, a citizen of New York State. I'm going to work on getting married here in New York State.
He approached me saying that he was very excited. He liked a lot of what I had said, among many other things, my advocacy then in 2000 for same-sex marriage rights. Mayors were allowed to perform weddings. It had been an issue I had campaigned on in several runs for public office before. And when I was elected mayor, I read the New York State domestic relations law. I asked our village attorney to look into whether same-sex marriage was legal in New York, and if not, why. What we came up with was that there's nothing forbidding same-sex marriage in New York, and there's nothing outlawing it. And that remains the case to this day. So from then on, it was not so much a choice as a moral obligation.
All of a sudden we started working on the same-sex weddings in New Paltz back in 2004.
William and Jeffrey ended up, I believe that what they said is, if we do this, we get to be the first ones.
And it was a very bold move for both of them, but particularly for Major McGowan, as that was the first time he had come out to his friends and his family. He had been in the military for a long time and served in Iraq. So it was a very momentous moment in his life.
Back in 2004, when this was all happening, I told the press over and over, we are going to desensitize the American public, that we're going to break some thresholds here, and people will become more accustomed to this.
What I was planning on was to have 4 couples the following spring, have a big wedding in the park with the gowns and the tuxes and all that. Even if legally it turned out to be shaky, at least we could do a little political theater and raise the issue, at least locally.
I now declare you husband and husband.
I'm Jay Belatra.
And I'm Brooke Garrett, and we were couple number 4 at the new Paltz weddings.
A neighbor of mine came up to me and she said, "Jay, I have to talk to you." I said, "What?" She goes, "Did you and Brooke ever want to get married?" And I said, "I guess, yeah, of course." She said, "Okay, listen, there's going to be a plan to have weddings in New Paltz this coming week. So you say you want to do it." I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Okay, I will let somebody know and they'll be getting in touch with you." This was before the actual weddings began that May in Massachusetts. So this was still virgin territory. Jason West had been inspired by Mayor Gavin Newsom in San Francisco. The San Francisco marriages happened, then the New Paltz marriages happened. But it was still a novelty, it was still a transgression, it was still something new, and it was still working people's nerves. It was still getting people.
And it was happening up here in the Hudson Valley, little New Paltz, New York.
Right, nobody expected that.
No.
We thought it would be covered by the local press. We didn't realize the international media attention that this would generate. Within about 15 minutes of sending out the press release, we started getting flooded with calls from the press. I think I did something like 11 live drive time interviews in 25 minutes. Within 6 hours, there were, I think, half a dozen news satellite trucks parked outside my office.
When I got to is it New Paltz Town Hall or
Village Hall?
New Paltz Village Hall. There were hundreds of people there, and there were all the news trucks there, and CNN and the local affiliates from Albany, and even I think Channel 4 and Channel 2 from New York.
And it just became just a ridiculous media frenzy. That wasn't why we did the weddings. We did these weddings because it was the right thing to do. And that's really all there is to it.
There was a real air of just excitement and something really historical happening here in New Paltz.
There was just such a great, joyful energy there. And there were half a dozen?
7 to 10, people waving
Very
their
sad
Bibles.
protesters.
With the rosary beads, and she was rocking back and forth in some sort of religious psycho-Christian trance.
Because we could
the world was going to spin off its axis because we were going to be married.
The Ulster County District Attorney, Don Williams, had warned Jason the night before that if he would go through with these marriages, he would be arrested.
So after speaking with my lawyers, we wanted to make sure that at least one couple got married before the police got to me and I was handcuffed and taken away. So we did the first wedding, which is William and Jeffrey.
In anticipation of the weddings and that there would be so much media attention, I didn't want news media outlets, newspapers, and television like the New York Post and Fox News to sort of make fun of 2 men getting married or 2 women getting married. So we had to really stage it where after the mayor, Jason West, would give the vows, we actually I told Jeff that we would shake hands and grab our fists in the air and announce it to the world that way and be proud. Instead of 2 men kissing, that would have been a photo around the world.
I think they got us kissing too.
Yes, they did get us kissing.
We may have been the first couple of the first 4 to actually kiss.
Instead of the hug.
Everybody else just seemed like they didn't want to do that and they just hugged. We went for the kiss.
The noise of the crowd and the cheering and support that they had was just inspiring. William actually was so excited talking to people and hugging people, we couldn't get him to sign the notarization statement. So we're desperately trying to get William's attention to get him to sign this thing. So we had one legal document, one finish before I got handcuffed and taken away. And then we did the second wedding, and still the cops were at the back of the crowd just watching. And my lawyer leans into me and just whispers, like, "They're not moving. They're not doing anything. You're good. Keep going."
The first couple, the second couple, the third couple, then it's our turn. And I was listening to Mayor Jason West kind of marry everyone, and he solemnized the weddings, right? And so he would say, I pronounce you partner and partner or whatever, and I hate that term. It's a business term. And so I whispered to Jason, and I said, "Call us husband and husband." And so he did. I now pronounce you.
The first one that he called husband.
Husband. And so that in the glory of the moment, somehow his kind of activist in front of everybody personality.
I froze.
He froze, and kind of his spirit came into me, and I started blowing kisses. Blowing kisses in the crowd, because you could feel the love. That's such a cliche, but it was true. It was palpable, and we had friends in the audience.
Yeah. And Brooks' impromptu show of this gesture of love suddenly became the Associated Press photo. It went out all over the country of blowing kisses and me standing there with a frozen sun.
We kept going. We did the 12 weddings, and unknown to me, that Rebecca Roxor, who was a deputy mayor, and Michael Zeeler, who was soon to be elected to the village board, who were coordinating getting the couples in place and some of the logistics, couldn't say no to people who wanted to be married. So I was expecting 12, and then they just kept coming and coming and coming, and it was, I think, an hour and a half, 2 hours, I can't quite remember, before the last couple was married. But the remarkable thing, one of many, is that the applause and support for the final couple was just as loud as it was for the first. And the crowd had grown to somewhere, I believe, to 1,500, 2,000 people watching. And the outpouring of support by this community was breathtaking.
And to see these people getting married and carrying bouquets and being sometimes really dressed up like James Watcher, it just made you feel warm. It was a really special day for a lot of people.
These people are legally married in the state of New York.
That's your position. Obviously, there are those who say, no way, and including the state health department. Are you worried about possibly being cited or arrested?
Not at all.
Under New York law, it's required that couples obtain a marriage license from the clerk before the ceremony. And obviously, none of the couples that the mayor performed ceremonies for had done that. So they were not ever, in fact, married under New York law.
I looked at the news, and it said, New York State annuls 2004 marriages. And I called him in, and I said, well, we're not married anymore. And woohoo! So he went out to the bars.
Mayor West performed weddings for people that had not obtained wedding licenses, and it is illegal to perform weddings under those circumstances, so he was charged under the New York Domestic Relations law with solemnizing weddings for unlicensed couples. So fundamentally, I had to decide whether it was constitutional to prevent people from same-sex couples from marrying. So I concluded that it was not constitutional, and therefore the mayor was being prosecuted under an unconstitutional statute, and therefore I dismissed the charges.
The DA went on to appeal that decision, and that went on for some months. In the end, the DA said he would not proceed with the charges because it had become, a fiscal drain on his very limited resources, and he kind of had other bigger bad guys to go after.
He finally dropped the charges a week before we were set to go to trial. And I was really disappointed in that, because I actually really wanted to go to trial. We were going to just go all out, no plea bargaining, no settlement. I wanted couples taking the stand. I wanted the clergy who followed me during the weddings taking the stand. I wanted to testify. I wanted a full jury trial. And let's see how this pans out when these people are allowed to tell their stories. Everyone should have the right to choose their own partner and marry them and have it be seen in the eyes of the society and our legal structure as no less than any other type of relationship. I don't care if someone's relationship lasts 3 weeks. I don't care if it lasts 3 months. I don't care if it lasts 30 years.
One of the reasons the man I married and I broke up was the fact that there was a lot of pressure. We had pressure from the New York metropolitan area from press and people. We had pressure from the country. We were traveling around on our own budget, with our own income. I was giving speeches in many cities, traveling. I didn't see him. He, coincidentally, at the same time we were getting married, got a book deal. He was doing his thing, and we didn't see each other, and there was a lot of stress and pressure. We became such advocates in fighting for same-sex equality that our own relationship fell apart, and that was the sacrifice.
But I don't think that anyone regrets having participated in that momentous historical moment and being part of something that pushed their desire for true civil rights.
Despite my breakup with Jeff, I completely support marriage equality because, you know, there's Jay and Brooke, a great couple of many years that have been together almost 15 years, and they're a testament to, you know, a union of two, the power of two.
Jay Blotcher and Brooke Garrett, I believe, have taken every opportunity to get married in any jurisdiction they can. It's almost like a marriage scavenger hunt. You go everywhere you can, one of them's going to take, and if not, it's a fun little collection to have. You're married in every state that allows it. So I'm sure by this point one of them was taken.
They said they were going to do marriage in California.
Right.
So let's go to California.
And that they would allow people from out of state
Right.
to get married.
Right.
It was perfect.
And we had this wonderful representative of the Justice of the Peace.
Yeah.
And
she was great, and she started to give the presentation, and I immediately started crying.
Yeah, look up.
I set the mental, and she said, you better stop that because I'm going to start crying too. So let's get on with this.
So a lot has grown out of those marriages that has added to the quality of life for same-sex couples and transgendered individuals in our community. The very next year we had a huge gay pride march, and we had never had one of those. And to this day I still see a lot more same-sex couples walking, holding hands, affectionate as much as their heterosexual counterparts. And that was a real change, I think, post-marriages.
People are really becoming desensitized. Now it's a little bit over 50% of the nation now supports same-sex equality, and things are moving, and you have to do this. When you believe in something, you need to move forward and make some personal sacrifices, because in the long run, you can really help make change.
We came back from California, and then a couple weeks later,
Brooke started to have increasing headaches, and we didn't know what was going on. We went to the hospital, and within minutes of checking the MRI, they said he has to have immediate emergency brain surgery. They shoved a piece of paper in front of me and said, sign this so that we can go ahead with the operation. Thankfully, they acknowledged and respected our relationship, and he was wheeled into surgery right away. Those 2 weeks in the hospital really drove home the point to me about why marriage equality is important. You know, certainly the ritual and the ceremony is important if you want the romantic aspect of it, but the very real aspect of having the rights of health care and representation for your partner, for your lover, for your husband is of paramount concern. And we're very lucky that Benedictine Hospital at Kingston, New York respected our relationship and allowed me to make what was actually a life-saving decision.
There is, of course, a powerful civil rights argument. The push for civil unions, for domestic partnerships, as a way to avoid giving gays the right to marry is simply a matter of separate but equal. And that's never worked in this country before. It won't work for this issue. The legal and civil rights arguments aside, there is no reason for our society to tell loving, committed couples that their relationship is less than any straight relationship.
when I talk about my husband, people stop and they have to think. That's the best bit of activism that I can participate in, making them stop and think, oh, right, that's what they are. Husbands.
Lights are kind of bright.
And now we are going to invite some panelists up. They're going to give us an update on where we stand with marriage equality across, across America, what we can do to keep the momentum going, and about some of the victories that are happening really just in the last few weeks and the last few days. It's been really dizzying what progress has been made. I'm going to welcome up to the stage Mayor Jason West, Jan Whitman, who is president of the Hudson Valley LGBTQ Community Center, Mariko Hirose, who is attorney for the New York Civil Liberties Union, and Kathy Marino Thomas, who is the former national co-president of Marriage and Equality New York. Each of them is going to make a brief statement about the work that they've done and what their forecast is for marriage equality. Then we will open it up to questions. After that, we will have a reception in the back of the room with refreshments. So anyway, thank you all for being here. And
Who wants to go first?
You.
Do I need the mic? I think not, yeah. First of all, thank you all so very much for coming out and celebrating the birthday of the New Paltz weddings. Sorry, I'm still a bit kind of choked up after the movie. That was one of the best days of my life. That's it. And Jay mentioned this at the beginning. I'm glad he did. I have to say, I got a lot of attention for this. I got a lot of press. I did. Where's Nora? I've the back. I think we counted, at one point, we did 500 interviews in the first 3 months after the weddings. I was on BBC World News 3 times, Conan O'Brien, Amy Goodman.
People magazine.
Just don't stop reminding people of the People magazine. Yes, I was one of People magazine's 50 hottest bachelors. She's the one who talked me into it because I said no 3 times, and she says, "Are you a fucking moron?" And it's not even about getting dates or something. She's like, every time you talk to the New York Times, you got reaching their 2 million readers. You know how many readers People has? 20 million. So just one sentence is going to get more press than anything you got in the New York Times. And she was right. I'm just glad she didn't successfully convince me to say yes to The Bachelor, who was also great. Or to the 2 documentary film crews who wanted to put cameras in my apartment. It was a very, very surreal time. And that's why I just rattled off a couple of the weirder things that happened in the aftermath. But it was a team effort. And, like I said, I got most of the press and got more than I should have fairly. Rebecca Rothschild, Denise Jelly is here, who put together that first gay pride parade. Nora Strano in the back, who I've been joking with, was, I didn't know Nora until the gay weddings, because things were so crazy here. We had the entire Queer Student Union running the phones, I think, all the phones, every phone in the building. And things were just chaotic. If it weren't first for Chris White, who was actually on his way to the gym and drove past Village Hall, saw the satellite trucks and figured to see what's going on, Chris had worked for Congressman Hinchy, so he knew how to operate in the eye of a hurricane. He got us organized in one night. and then he had to go to work, unfortunately. And
I took 2 days off.
oh, sorry, you took 2 days off. But you know, we're looking around for someone to take over from Chris, and someone said, oh well, we should no, we already know who we know. We want Nora. She's done all this, the other. I'm like, all right, fine, I don't care, just get somebody. And since then, she then served, I think she was as my secretary, as a village clerk, and has a long relationship with the village and all this. Michael Zeeler, who I think I saw come in, who helped usher the couples and kept hurling more of them at me during, as they came up, as did Rebecca. And there's people here, I'm trying to dance to the crowd, but I'm sure there's people here I don't remember or can't see. But just remember that it was a we, not an I guess is what I really wanted to say. Because frankly, I'm not up on the latest marriage equality issues because I can't keep track with it. I can't keep up with it. It's happening too fast. I know, that's related to you.
I wanted Jen to talk next, if I may.
You bet.
Just about the quick metamorphosis of this community following the 2004 weddings.
Well, first let me say that I have a remembrance from that day as well, because you couldn't not be there if you lived in the community and had an interest. And as I'm walking toward where most of the crowd is, I spot a minister who I know through my work with the Food Bank of the Hudson Valley. He unfortunately was part of the group that was protesting the marriages, and he had this little moment where he spotted me, and even though I've been out my entire life, there was no context for him in the work that I do to think of me as gay, and there's always that presumption of heterosexuality, although I don't understand that. But anyway, he had that moment where, a look crossed his eyes, and I thought, that's right, we're gay, we support gay marriage, and we feed your children too. Yeah. Now that being said, some of the wonderful things that have happened in the aftermath of the marriages were that we had a first Pride March and Festival the following year. And then, as a result of that, a group of people got together and founded our community center in Kingston, New York. And, a major urban area might have a gay community center. A city like Albany of medium size, hi Ted, which is the state capital, might have a community center. But when a small city like Kingston, which serves rural counties around it, has a community center for gay people, folks can no longer say that they don't recognize there's a little visibility going on. And I honestly believe that having a community center in a place like Kingston, New York, has been one of the stepping stones leading toward a larger acceptance of gay people are part of our daily lives. They have events at the community center that are open to the entire public, and I think it has a great deal to do with the shift in how people feel about gay people and about gay marriage.
Kathy, could you address the work that you've done in the marriage equality movement?
My name is Kathy Marino Thomas, and I've worked on this issue for 17 years.
Can you speak louder?
Wow, I think it's the first time in my entire life anyone's ever asked me to do that. I must be out of practice.
And no one asked me to speak louder.
I've been working on this issue for about 17 years. I was the executive director of Marriage Equality New York, and then board president of Marriage Equality New York, and then after we gained marriage here in this state, we merged our groups nationally, and up until June, I was the board president for Marriage Equality USA. We have been all over this country, certainly all over New York State. We've spoken at the March on Washington. My daughter's 14. I don't think she remembers us ever not doing marriage work. We've, little baby steps at a time, gained marriage here. We got 2 New York State senators to retire because they were tired of us sitting in their office to demand they change their vote. I once I once hung out of my car on the way to Albany because I saw Senator Alisi and his wife driving there. And, slashed my Marriage Equality New York t-shirt at him and told him he'd never forget my name. I don't think he ever did. So we've done a lot of work, but I have to say that the day that I got a phone call that Jason was doing this here, I said, that's it. That's our breakthrough. That's what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for a large public statement on marriage equality here. So I'm forever grateful.
Marika, could you address what's going on now? What's going on in the last month? Where we can expect to see some movement and change?
Sure. Hi, I'm Marika Hirose. I am an attorney with the New York Civil Liberties Union. We are the New York State affiliate of the ACLU, and I'm here with our chapter director for the Lower Hudson Valley, Dan Berger, who's in the audience. Hi, everyone. I want to start by saying it's an honor for me to be here with all of you and with Mayor West and with my fellow panelists. And congratulations to everyone who's celebrating their 10th anniversary today. I know that James Essex, the project director of the LGBT project at the ACLU, was here 10 years ago, and he sends his warmest regards. He's very sorry that he couldn't be here today, but he was very proud to be part of this exciting and courageous moment here at New Paltz, and he's very proud to be carrying on that work, and for our organizations to have been carrying on that work in the courts and in the legislatures. So the important part, where are we going? Last year, we got to the Supreme Court in a case that the New York Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, and the law firm of Paul Weiss filed. And the Supreme Court affirmed what we had thought all along, which is that discriminating against gay and lesbian married couples is simply wrong, and there is no legitimate reason for that kind of discrimination. And the court struck down Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act. And that we have seen so many cases and also state efforts around the country since that decision. So many of them successful. It's just, we talked about a few of those states today, but it's just, it feels like every day you learn about a new successful decision. And of course, this issue, the issue that's being decided by courts right now is the issue of whether other states have to recognize the validity of marriages entered in states like New York, and whether states have to allow gay and lesbian couples the freedom to marry. And it's an important question that, of course, very much affects New York couples, because all couples deserve the right to know that their families and their relationships are respected wherever they go. And this issue is in several courts of appeals right now, which is the intermediate court, and we expect that it's going to end up back at the Supreme Court in the next few years. So we have a lot to celebrate today in terms of how far we've come, but we still have some more ways to go. And even when we do win the marriage fight, which I sincerely believe that we will, there's still a lot more that we have to do to ensure that we have a safe environment, safe society for all gay, lesbian, transgender, and gender nonconforming New Yorkers. So things like making sure that the human rights law is enforced, making sure that we pass the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act, making sure that the Dignity for All Students Act is being implemented so that all LGBTQ students know that they have a safe school environment to go to every day. So we're so happy to be here, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Looking at the states where it's being deliberated, what would you say are the greatest options or the greatest potential in the coming months, or are there certain states that we should be watching because?
I mean, it's hard to know because I don't know that we would have predicted which states.
Right.
I mean, all the states have been victories
That's right.
since the Wizards.
And it's taken all kinds of work to get all of this. It depends on the state. Some activist actions like we do work. Some lawsuits work. Some legislative attempts work. It depends. We got surprised by so many states that just came on board. It's an amazing turnaround. It's amazing.
How do you explain something like Arizona? You know? For those who don't know what happened yesterday, Arizona had a bill in front of the legislature that said that if you have deep religious convictions, then you can.
This is how I explain it, Jay. I'll be honest with you. This country has lost sight of what the founding fathers meant by our founding documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, etc. What really needs to happen is the two-party system needs to be, I mean, it's bigger than marriage equality, basically. The two-party system needs to be broken. Jason is right, we need a third party. It's obnoxious now. They're working more for their own popularity than they are for the good of the state. Second thing is we need to remind people that our founding fathers thought of us. They thought of all of us. Even if they didn't go home at night thinking of same-sex couples, they thought to make room for all people in the founding documents. There's a separation of church and state in this country. I don't really give a rat's ass what their religion is like or what they believe. My belief is that I don't have to count that. And I think that we really need to reach out beyond gay people to all Americans and say, which way do you want it? Do you want a religious state or do you want a free state?
And if I could ask you folks, in these areas of religious exemptions, like when we had marriage equality passed here in New York State, it wasn't without that little caveat about religious.
Listen, religious exemption is already in marriage law.
I understand.
So that's why it's so easy for us to say, okay, yes, you'll put it in, because it's already there. If they would read the damn law that they're trying to keep us out of, they would know what they don't need to worry about.
And New York State's religious exemption is very narrow, and we've always had the state human rights law, and the state human rights law has had the sexual orientation protection for a long time now. And when I mentioned making sure that that's enforced, that's sort of what I was going to. We actually have a case right now where a lesbian couple was turned away from a wedding venue because using religion as
They are Marriage Equality USA members.
And we have to make sure that that doesn't happen and that the state human rights law is being enforced against everyone.
In those areas where it's a public accommodation and not the minister you're hiring, it has to be that it's fair across the board.
Then there's also the little piece where, the churches in this country are exempt from taxation. And they're exempt from taxation because they're supposed to stay the hell out of our government.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to preach politics from the pulpit, get your tax bill ready, start writing checks.
I have one other question. Once there is marriage equality in all 50 states and all U.S. territories, as we all know is going to happen, what do you folks think about the idea of reparations? Let's take it another step. And I am serious about this.
I think it's a damn good idea.
And I speak to you too because you have the power, statewide, nationally, to make this happen. But you think about it. A good friend, Millie, would have been in the service for the number of years it takes to get a pension. But she was booted out of the service before those laws changed.
Well, I will say that history will not give that to us.
No, you say that, but if you look at what happened, and this is, I'm not a lawyer, but this is the lawyer side of me. But if you look at what happened with Japanese American reparations and how something was done, even though it was legal at the time to put them in internment camps, you can't say, well, because the laws didn't apply at the time, it's discrimination. And I think you can look back in these areas where a 61-year-old man passes away a month ago. He was 6 months away from collecting Social Security. His partner, who would be eligible to collect his Social Security benefits at age 60 had they been allowed to marry, will not be able to do so. The man who passed away was my brother. He and his partner have been together for 30 years. It's real people's lives.
Well, I will say nothing's impossible because...
Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
Let's hold Lisa out as our hero on this, because she certainly didn't think that she had to sit there and let them take over $300,000 out of her life because her marriage wasn't recognized in this country. And she's changed that law. Also a Marriage Equality USA member.
Reparations, put it on the agenda.
I think there will be some things.
Gonna get busy there. I protest, you go to court.
I think there will be some things that will be remedied, like the discharges being changed, dishonorable discharges being changed and remedied. There will be some things that will be remedied on a shorter term, like you being able to amend your tax returns for 3 years. That's not...
When it works for you.
Yeah, you don't have to.
There's a good and a bad side to everything. Taxes would be the bad side, but you got to take it.
We're going to open this up to questions, and I stress questions rather than statements, okay? But if you'd like to ask any of the members of the panel, or individually or as a group, any questions, please feel free. Who would like to start? Sir.
I am David Weiser, and we happen, I won't make a statement, but we happen to be number 278 that was married here on July 10th of 04. And I wanted to know if Mayor West has married more gay couples and straight ones since
I don't discriminate. I'll even marry straight people if I have to. Yeah, the funny part is actually Susan Bookstein. I shouldn't say the name really, but the first couple I married was very shortly after it was legalized. The law took effect, and it was in the same spot. It was in the park, and it struck me that that was the whole point of it. Is that there were no cameras. It was, I think we used one of the clerks and somebody else who works here as a witness because they didn't bring witnesses. And it was just a 5-minute ceremony, very simple. They'd already been together for 20, 30 years, so they didn't need anything elaborate. But the normalcy of it struck me as being the whole point of having to go through the hundreds of cameras for a few months 10 years ago. It's a pretty good trade if you ask me.
Questions?
Jay.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Mary Mendola. Joanne and I are two of Jason's brides. Jason, people come to us and say, how has this changed our lives? How has this changed your life?
Could you repeat the question?
We're often asked as couples who are married here, how has it changed your life? What I'm asking Jason now is, how has it changed his life?
Well, I hear you suffered unemployment for quite a long time.
A little bit, yeah. But that was because the economy crashed and I'm a house payment. How did it change my life? Almost nobody ever believes me when I say this, but I don't like giving interviews. I don't like being the center of attention in that way, when it's perpetual and constant and omnipresent. And there's a certain level of notoriety or well-knownness just for being mayor, but it's the mayor of a tiny place. There's only 7,000 people here. It's not that big a deal. But being on the phone with a friend of mine who's checking into a hotel in Seattle, And she just mentions New Paltz, and the guy checking her says, "Oh wait, New Paltz? Where they did those weddings?" You know, being the answer to a question on Jeopardy is. They made it. I was a character on an episode of Law and Order, and I don't mean like a fictionalized version. I mean Mayor Jason West of the village of New Paltz. And apparently I was about 45 with gigantic ears in a oak-paneled office, and because the plot was one of the couples I married, somebody kills somebody, so then the husband testify against the husband, so they got to go, and because I'm a public figure, they don't need my permission to use my real name. You know, I was mentioned on Family Guy. Mayor Adam West from Family Guy got in trouble. He blew the entire treasury of the town on a solid gold statue of Diggum from the breakfast cereal. And so in order to divert attention from that, he decides to outlaw marriage altogether, or outlaw gay marriage in his town. So somebody apparently comes up to him and says, "Oh, Mayor West, I think it's great that you're performing these gay weddings." And he goes, "Oh no, that's the other Mayor West. I'm outlawed." Being recognized walking into an Indian restaurant on East 6th Street. Just being well known is incredibly, incredibly uncomfortable because you're always on stage. And I think that's the thing that's the price in my mind, in my life. That was the price that I paid. Well, that and the death threats, I guess. But that's the thing that's lingered is. It's strange to go out. It's been strange for 10 years to go out in my own town because I'm always more cartoon character than living human being. Because people know of me for much longer than they might know me for who I am. It sounds kind of weird and petty, but that's the most difficult thing that I found dealing with it. Just being well known for anything, and especially for this one act. And that, I suppose, in being thanked personally so often for something that was a group effort, that's why I mentioned that in my opening comments. And the death threats, I suppose.
Do you still get death threats?
No, not for years.
I need to check your email for
That's I haven't checked the email.
Any other questions, please?
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Kathy. I have a question for the mayor. A lot of good stuff for people recognizing you and media, contacting you. I'm just wondering about other politicians, other folks who, are either mayors or at any other level. Do they ever contact you for your advice on how to do it, or, kind of tell you, when we were kind of waiting to see how it happened with you before we took a chance, or any kind of feedback like that?
One, Mayor John Shields of Nyack came up here. I see a lot of nods. For those who don't know him, openly gay in a long-term relationship. At first announced he was going to do weddings himself, and then after speaking to I think it was NL Liberties even. He decided to take another tack, and he actually tried to get a marriage license in his town, the town of Orangeburg, I think, is the town that Nyack is in, and was denied. Got that in writing that the reason for the denial was his gender and all this, so he sued his own town. So the mayor of the village suing his own town for a civil rights violation, and that became kind of took off on its own, actually became the better case. All of our legal cases got sidelined because John's was just so much more clear-cut. But other than that, it was one of the most disappointing parts about the whole thing, was the deafening silence. There's hundreds of villages in New York, I think over 600 villages, probably over 1,000 towns. Each town can appoint marriage officers, even if they don't have mayors, to perform weddings. But no one followed. And look, in the press there's a lot about 19 criminal charges, each with the penalty of a $1,000 fine and a year in jail. So, it sounds really dramatic, but that was never going to happen. And actually, I wish they had sent me to jail. I actually should have violated the restraining order and gone to jail. Because even for a night, because those headlines would have dwarfed everything else. Mayor in prison for performing matrimony? Really? This is what's going on right now? So there's minimal risk. There's minimal risk, and there's less risk with everybody else who joined in. One person takes the most risk. Two, you got to divide it in half. By the time you get to 14, 15, 30, 50, 100, And I tried to convince more, but no one else was willing, let alone to call me to ask on their own. The only one who called to ask what could be done was Al Sharpton. And because he has constraints, I had to be oblique about it. It was like a bad spy movie, you know. Well, Reverend, what I think the movement might need is certain preachers to maybe step up and start performing the ceremonies too. And that never went anywhere. So it was a lot of dead ends is really what it came down to. But hey, more attention for me.
I think this is really for all of you. All of you issue a comment on this if you can. For the sake of everybody that's here, because I know a lot of people here. We do a lot of activist things together. That's how Jason and I met when I first moved to New Paltz 13 years ago. And activist work, as you all know, can be incredibly frustrating, especially when you're doing things that are aimed at like macro issues like stopping war, as opposed to like getting a crosswalk put in on a dangerous street in your town, which you can sometimes get accomplished. When this happened, there was a lot of, first of all, the reaction to it, none of us could have expected, obviously. We all woke up to the same shock that morning before this all happened. What happened after that? For a brief moment, you'll all recall there was a big backlash. And in 2004, there were even people saying that by having incited an anti-gay equality backlash that we were, causing an upsurge in conservatism in nationwide politics. And yet, here we are today, and it's just snowballing down the hill. It's gone away. They've had the dead enders are doing everything they can, but clearly the history is progressing now. And so I'd like if the four of you could just comment on your own experiences or offer encouragement to everybody's here to remember the importance of persistence in things that need to be accomplished, because of that whole notion of how, you never know. Today's the day. Today was the day. We woke up that morning thinking it was just another day we were going to do one of our political theater things, the way you described it yourself, and then suddenly those satellite trucks were everywhere, and it was like, wow, today's the day. So I'd like all four of you just throw it to everybody out here about what you do, what keeps you going, why we need to keep going, not just on this issue, but everything we're involved in, and how you put the victories that you do achieve along the way to use to remain motivated, to persist and keep going for every day when you just never know.
Well, for me, it's history. Our country was founded on people who had the balls to make a change. They were living in their own country, frustrated by the rules and regulations there, by the constraints, and they made a move. That inspires me. When I get up in the morning and I feel that heat of anger about something, I know my wife always says, oh my God, here we go again. Because what happens is marriage equality in New York. And I think that you have to be willing to take a personal responsibility for change. You have to be willing to be disappointed, because once in a while it changes, like with this issue. We went through many years of doing marriage work, and I think I've been to every community center or any kind of set up church, schools, and I've talked to middle school students and high school students and colleges, and just groups of people like you all here, and all over the state of New York. I had 2 guys walk the entire state. I think they came here, stopping and talking to people about marriage equality. You have to be willing to be defeated, because only through that do you get progress. You have to be willing to know that you're going to suffer rejection and push through that rejection. You have to have a vision, and you have to be able to see the light. So I find that it's personal inspiration. Particularly marriage equality was personal to me, but I've worked on other issues that weren't quite as personal to me. I was an AIDS buddy for 10 years because I woke up one day and I was mad at President Reagan because he wouldn't give any money to AIDS research. He wouldn't even say the word. So I wound up being an AIDS buddy and helping people with AIDS go to the doctor and do whatever they had to do, and do hospital advocacy and that sort of thing. It's an internal thing. As far as the change goes, This is America. If you want change, get up and make change. We're not living under a dictatorship, and we need to make sure it stays that way. We need to exercise our rights and read our documents and know that as citizens of this country, we have the right to protest. We have the right to assembly. We have the right to speak out. We have freedom in our press. We have freedom in our speech. And we need to learn the tools that we have at our disposal and how to use them.
I think what really drives me are the other advocates. I mean, I don't have, nearly the numbers of years of experience that you or so many of you have, but I'm
She's
constantly.
3 years old. Come on.
She was in middle school.
I was in college. But I'm constantly inspired by the people who have been doing this work. And I really saw it while I was part of the Windsor litigation team, and seeing not only the people who have been litigating this issue for so long, but doing public education and doing legislative work and other advocacy work. And what was so great about that litigation was that it felt like it wasn't just casework. It was so many different groups of people coming together and doing different types of work. And I think that's been generally true and continues to be true of the marriage movement, as well as so many other types of work that I did. So that's been very inspiring.
Can you repeat the question?
Give a little bit back to the audience on the topic of persistence, of the importance of persistence in your commitment, because of the fact that, as we saw here, that you just never know, like when today's the day, that you have to just, even if you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel, how do you keep yourself moving forward, working with committed people, and hoping, tomorrow's going to be the day. Tomorrow's going to be the importance of persistence, because change does happen. Most of us here are old enough to have seen quite a bit of change happen. So, talk to people. You've been persisting for 13 years, and I know you, and I know it started before we met. So,
I guess the combination of debilitating hopelessness alternating with rage, I suppose. And I'm not even being facetious. I spent a lot of time being utterly hopeless. I think our species has got about to the end of the century to survive as a species. So I think humanity is extinct in 100 years. I think we've passed the point of fixing it. I think that we don't have time to do a lot of things. But, the other panelists are right, that despite all that, and maybe because of it, you got to keep going. And for me, that's where the rage comes in, unfortunately. I wish I was somebody who could kind of ploddingly, calmly, like in a even and keeled frame of mind, just relentlessly work at a project or work at a movement. And for me, it's all fits and starts. It's sprinting and then collapsing into panting, puddle for the next race. But I guess at the end of the day, well, because I flippantly mentioned the death threats before. Just after I got the first ones, I had to leave New Paltz, and I think I was at a local bar. One of them was at Oasis, and I got shoved from behind by this big guy, bigger than me and bald, and he screamed in my ear as he shoved me against the wall, "Someone should fucking shoot you, fucking faggot lover," and then threw me away and just ran out. So it wasn't exactly a death threat, more like a "I'm going to kick your ass" threat, I suppose. But I did get actual, you should be shot and killed kind of messages.
But then he ran, didn't he?
The first one ran, yeah. The point is this, is that the next day I had to go down to the city. I was to speak at the alternative Queens St. Patrick's Day parade, because they don't allow gays and lesbians to march in the main one. So I went down there, and I threw up about 6 times on the way down. My friends Jim and Jonathan drove me. They had got a big kick out of playing my security detail. They got matching sunglasses for the day. So they did. So we're down there, and all of a sudden it's like it wasn't home. I mean, getting threatened or having just a jerk screw with you in New Paltz is one thing, but now I'm in thousands of strangers. I don't know any of these people. I don't know where I am, somewhere in Queens, and all of a sudden that made all the difference, and the fear kicked in. Because I looked at the stage and it was just like an aluminum thing with 4 steps going up and completely exposed, and I just thought this could be the day that I die, and I'll never see it coming.
You remember the day you came into at the wedding march for us?
Which day is that?
You came to Brooklyn to talk
Yes,
about
I do
wedding
remember
march.
that, yeah.
It's the same drill.
Yeah.
We were all afraid that day. That was the first one we ever did.
Yeah.
We walked over the Brooklyn Bridge in solidarity with, we made up umbrellas in the colors of the flag, and we lined people up by color, and it was all the same. We had to, we were afraid. We were.
The point is, and thank you, I'm sorry that something could be abrupt. There was never any doubt that I was going to get up on the stage, though. It's like the feeling was inside was when you're cranking up towards the top of the roller coaster. You know, right at the top when there's nothing you can possibly do to stop it. I mean, but you don't want to go over, but you're going over, and there's nothing you can do about it. I had that feeling in the days leading into the marriages themselves. I had that feeling walking up towards the stage. But before I got up on the stage, I remember looking up at these trees and I swear I could see every single leaf simultaneously and them all moving, and I heard, this is the middle of the city, all of a sudden I could no longer hear the cars, and I could no longer hear the people. All I heard were the birds and the sound of the wind and the leaves. And it was just, not like a zombie, but just like water through a channel. Like there was only one direction I was headed. I was going up there, and it could be as soon as my foot hit those aluminum steps. You know, you don't hear the gunshot when you get hit, from what I understand. So you literally never hear it coming. So I guess in terms of perseverance, what it comes down to is, if you're not willing to die for it, then stop wasting your time. And the things that you're willing to die for are the things that are going to be most important, or the things that you're going to stay persistent to change or to save or to protect. And again, I know I sound a lot exaggerated a lot, but I've talked about this a lot and thought about it a lot, and that day is what clarified it for me was, yeah, this is going to be okay, because if I die today, it was worth it. It was worth it to die for this. And I did the best I could with other things, that kind of thought process. And that's not that's not the kind of thought process you get forced into having at 25 or 26. But I think it's important because we don't like to think about death. It's a difficult thing to talk about. There's a threshold for what you're going to do with your life, what you're going to change. I can't think of a better word.
I think I have a tad more optimism for the longevity of the human race than my
I'm glad somebody does.
But I will say I'm glad we both got the message about the Johnny Cash look for I know this sounds a little hokey, but I tried to spend at least part of every day making the world a better place. And if you belong to a community, of course, that's the place where you want to do a lot of work related to making the world a better place to be, a better place to live. You know, when I look at everything that's been accomplished through the work we've done at the center, and I see how much more there is to be done, that beyond marriage equality, we need to make sure that there's equality in the workplace, that gay people have equal access to jobs and to housing. I mean, it's so much more than just marriage equality, which of course brings a lot of wonderful benefits with it. But,
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome. But you know, I think about the fact that I have to do a little bit of work every day to move us along, because it breaks my heart that someone like my friend Ted, he and his partner Jack did not get to get married in New York State because the time ran out before they were able to do that. So for people like Ted and Jack, I have to do a little bit of work every day. I have to make a difference. You know, I look at some of the other folks who are doing the work at the center, like Vanessa, who's in the back there. Hey, Vanessa. And you have to understand, it's not 8 hours a day for her. I mean, she works more than 8 hours a day, and yet here she is tonight at this. It's not just a job, it's also an act of love that you spend that much time and that much commitment for these issues that are so important to all of us. And what I would ask is what each one of you would like to do to spend a little time each day making this world a better place for all of us. Vanessa can tell you how to get in touch with the center if you want to help us out there. I'm sure the other folks here can let you know how you can help their groups too. But seriously, a little bit of your time every day to make the world a better place. And we're going to have a better place.
Last question, thank you.
My question is about the global picture of gay rights, and I just wonder if any of you would like to comment on how the situation here and the advances in marriage equality are playing a part in what's happening in the world. And I'm thinking particularly, my friend is traveling in right at this moment from Russia to visit Uganda. You know, what are your thoughts about the connection and how what's happening here is helping, hopefully, but also...
I personally think it's time to protest at the UN about Uganda. That's my feeling.
And Russia.
And my feeling is that that's the body that we need to look at for global justice. We as Americans we lead in many ways. I think our president is trying hard to lead in this way. I think he's trying hard to lead in the rights of all people, no matter what your orientation or beliefs are. But I believe that the UN is the place that we need to go to get global justice. We can't forget that marriage equality is not the beginning and ending of our civil rights. And that comes from a person who's worked on solely this issue for a very long time. Our youth are at stake. People in other countries are at stake, and I think that to a certain degree our success in marriage equality is almost getting in our way. We have to be reminded that there are other issues.
That's right.
I think the hope is that the conversation that we're having and how far we've come in the United States is also going to spill over to the rest of the world, just like how, you know, what happened in New Paltz in 2004 really united national conversation as well. And actually, if you look at the public poll sort of graph, you can really see 2004 was the beginning of this steady and slow but steady and continuous improvement to where we are.
Wouldn't you agree that we're not actually doing all we can when we have states like Arizona who are allowed to bring something like that almost to the brink of passing? Other countries are actually leading in the world of gay rights stronger. The United Kingdom, for example, they rolled over to marriage equality with no push because it was the right thing to do. Spain, the most Catholic country in the world, was one of the first to pass marriage equality and full equality for all of their citizens. So perhaps America, now, of course it's coming from the person of the panel who's in the street. So take that with a grain of salt, but I think it's time for us to get a little more angry with our government.
There's, I don't have the insider's knowledge, having not working in a LGBTQ organization, or, you know, I'm straight, so I lose a lot of perspective on these conversations. But, you know, Holland didn't play any really role at all in my decision to form gay marriages. I mean, I didn't look outside of America for examples, so I don't really presume that other countries are going to look to us for one either. It has more to do with the internal issues in the country. So I looked at Hawaii and Vermont, who had done civil unions. That was my example, not whoever had done gay marriages at another national level. And marriage equality it's really, you have to have a certain level of safety and security to have this be an issue at all, let alone a pivotal issue. I mean, if you're looking at Africa and Russia, it's about survival, it's not about getting married. So if people are being dragged off and beaten, that's a different and a totally different animal than anything that the people in this panel have worked on.
My own personal opinion is that, and this is not a center point of view, this is my personal opinion. I think that if our government says that it does not believe in the abuses of human rights, in these instances where you're talking about gay rights in other countries, or lack of gay rights, or kill the gays kinds of laws, the United States government should not be funding those governments.
Wanted to end on a positive note. Just support for same-sex marriage has jumped 21 percentage points from 2004, when Massachusetts became the first state to legalize same-sex marriage, up to 2013. Currently, a majority, 53% of Americans favor allowing gay and lesbian couples to legally marry, compared to 41% who oppose. In 2003, less than 1/3, or 32%, of Americans supported allowing gay and lesbian people to legally marry. So, you know, you take a snapshot, sometimes it can be discouraging, but if you look over the long net arc of it, it's really quite amazing what has been accomplished since Jason West did the marriages back in 2004. I want to thank all these people. They're my heroes. They've done so much. Couples who were married that day, some who are here, as well as the people who supported this. We're happy to have you here and happy to have your support, because you know there's so much more still to do. But we're here to celebrate the fact that so much has already happened. We're going to have a reception now in the back of the room, and please feel free to have drinks and snacks. We want to thank our friends over at Augusta's Luscious and Sweet Marissa's, who provided, donated the snacks for us. We also had somebody else who underwrote the refreshments. In Good Taste, yes, our friends over in Good Taste, who also gave bottles of champagne to everybody who was married back in 2004. So they did long-term. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Members of the media.